As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers. People who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today.
I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
And we are back. Fantasy Football Consistency Show coming at you on another Thursday night. We had week 1. It's all in the books. We're going to talk about it. Week 2 has actually just started. Tampa Bay, Carolina. Of course, as always, we're here as part of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. We're honored to be a part of that. As always, live from Florida. He's still there. He's still alive. Nobody got blown away. He's back. Ron Rigney. Ron, welcome aboard.
Thanks, buddy. Doing good. Week 2, week 1 in the books. Had some big performances from some guys. We're going to talk some consistency as we always do. We had some clunkers, some disappointing guys. I had a couple of running backs in particular in my biggest money league really screw the pooch for me last week, so that didn't help. But I am glad for the fact that I do get to say the words Gardner Minshew and clutch game in the same sentence this week, which I never thought I would get to do.
And then when you see a picture of the guy, oh my gosh, it just cracks me up. I think somebody said something about him at the press conference, and he goes, "The guy looks like he should be selling you tires."
See, I've seen a couple like that. I've seen he draws a nice resemblance to Uncle Rico as well.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so
that's true. Yeah, Uncle Rico's a good one too. So
but fun name, fun mustache. What's not to like?
Yeah, and this guy's a rookie.
Apparently, yeah.
That's
and
amazing because he looks like he's 40. He looks like he's 43 years old.
And he has some kind of insane, aerospace engineering degree as well.
Of course he does.
Yeah, he has some ridiculous degree that would make him, millions and millions of dollars.
Like the guy from Ohio State that played back in the day. It won the national championship way back in whatever it was, 2001, 2002. Way back when Ohio State beat Miami of Florida in the triple overtime game with, whoever the quarterback was. Krenzel? Was that his name?
Krenzel. And here's a side note to that, is the two teams that played that year, Miami and Ohio State, that season, I saw them both play live that season.
Nice.
How cool is
that? Krenzel was some 3.98 microbiologist student at Ohio State. When he got done playing football, he went to grad school, and he's some super microbiologist or something. So every once in a while, you get a smart one. But anyway. All right, so like I said, we are here this week. Week 1 is in the books. I had a really good week, which always scares me. When my teams all come out kicking ass, it really bothers me. I'm excited for it, but it always scares me. It's is that it? Is it too good to be true? Is it, now obviously my big boys that, that of course that I talked about all summer long, actually a lot of big boys, Chris Carson, of course, but the ones that were my 2 favorites, probably 3 favorites at wide receiver were Larry Fitzgerald, Emmanuel Sanders, and my boy, Mr. Consistency, at least for now, Deshaun Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Killed it.
They did.
So I was over 200 in a lot of leagues that are normally 150 wins. So it was a good week. I won both of mine in Kings Classic because of Djax and Fitzgerald and Chris Carson. Also because of Dalvin Cook. But anyway, good week. So we'll see if it continues. Already made a trade in the Kings Classic. Mike Clay came scratching at my door because he had 2 running backs and 7 receivers. And long story short, the trade ended up being I gave him Devontae Freeman for Sammy Watkins. Now, I know Sammy Watkins is not Mr. Consistency, but Devontae Freeman didn't have a very good week. I have Austin Eckler as my flex, so I put him in my number 2 spot and got Sammy Watkins to move into the spot where I had Marvin Jones. So
nice.
So I think it was a good trade for both sides. God gave him, Freeman. He wanted Chubb. I was a little lenient. I told him I'd give him Chubb for Michael Thomas. He turned that down. I didn't think Chubb for Galladay was worth it, so we started working on the Devontae Freeman thing. But anyway, we're here to talk about how Week 1 went, and let's get started with the quarterback position. So 16 quarterbacks earned a clutch game this week. For those of you who don't know what a clutch game is, it's basically the point average that puts the top 12 quarterbacks into, or kind of fills in with the top 12 quarterbacks. Now, this week was 16, which again is higher than normal, but this happens every year at the beginning of the year. In fact, September usually sets the bar pretty high for the clutch factor because of the fact it's warmer weather. Defenses and offenses are just kind of getting their act together. So, if, for example, we get to wide receivers, you're going to see that 47 wide receivers earned a clutch game, where normally the goal is that it's the top 36. But I looked, and last year there were 46 wide receivers who earned a clutch game in Week 1. It all goes down from here. It'll scale back. By the time we get to November, December, when the weather's cold and it's raining and it's snowing and all that kind of fun stuff, this will all adjust, and we'll have only 10 quarterbacks earn a clutch game in a week or two. So it's all part of the average, and we understand that. So I think the most amazing thing is if you look at the top guys, the studs, I always say, look, how many studs made it in this week? And, we see Patrick Mahomes, everybody's worried, oh my gosh, he's playing Jacksonville. Then of course, Tyreek Hill goes down and everybody's panicking, oh my gosh. End of the day, Patrick Mahomes, another 30-point week. That only ranked him 5th, which is really sad. But this kid just keeps clicking. And, this time with Sammy Watkins, I don't see Sammy Watkins getting tons of touchdowns and lots of yards every week, but he's definitely going to be the one. He's definitely going to see a lot of targets. Who do you see, do you see this continuing until Hill comes back? Is it going to be, you think that McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson on the other side are going to do what needs to be done to keep teams honest and not double teaming a guy like Watkins? I mean, we know we got Kelsey and Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy. What are your thoughts on the wide receiver 2 scenario there in Kansas City?
Well, I think guys like Hardman and Robinson, I think from right now anyway, look on the outside looking in, with that offense, the way it's laid out, Travis Kelce and Sammy Watkins are the 2 guys that in the passing game you have to account for. And so I think that I don't know if Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson have done enough just yet to earn that respect to get the second guy off Sammy Watkins, get some of that attention off him. So when you're looking at those guys too, Mecole Hardman especially is a guy that I got in a couple of deeper leagues. He's somebody that might be a sneaky little play, but I don't know necessarily if they've done enough. I think they're talented enough to be able to do that and free up Watkins a little bit, but I don't know if we see that just yet this week, especially against Jacksonville.
Right. And, this week now they're going against Oakland, which we know has a pretty bad pass defense. So we expect, them to light it up again this week, as pretty much he did every week last year. So other studs that we expect to be up there, Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, all those guys are up there. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that these guys made the list this week. They've all been pretty consistent. Brees, not as much. It'll be interesting to see when Brees goes against the Saints go against a lesser offense. This week they're going against the Rams, so probably not this week. Then Seattle is probably not that week. But, down the road when they start playing like Chicago, Jacksonville, Arizona, they may not have to put up the points that they had to do in that game to keep up with Deshaun Watson and company. But, it was a good start. Brees looked good. He did throw a bad interception in the first half there. they kind of started off slow, but kind of picked it up in the second half. You know, at this point, are you thinking maybe we should go out and try to get Breeze, or let kind of Breeze cool off and then kind of just let him be who he is and, you know, see if he gets back to a 50% consistency model?
I don't think he's a guy I'm going to rush out to get for all the reasons that we talked about in the offseason. He was inconsistent last year, and it was a Monday night game, first game of the year. You know, the Texans are, you know, a team that, like you said, they're going to score a lot of points. You know, Hopkins, Will Fuller, Deshaun Watson et al. So, I mean, they've got a lot of weapons as well, and it was just a matter of it was going to have to be that kind of game for them to keep up with him. So it wouldn't shock me if you see a little more consistency out of him this season, but not really somebody that I'm rushing out to get if he's available or somebody I was targeting in drafts.
Right. And I think that, you know, the one thing I saw in most of the game that I watched, you know, his arm strength isn't what it used to be, certainly not throwing a lot of bombs. You know, he did throw the ball to Ted Ginn quite a bit, but Ted Ginn is, you know, these are, you know, 10, 15, 20-yard out, you know, runs. These aren't 60-yard bombs that he used to throw. Most of them were, you know, short to intermediate passes. You know, the one of them was a 60-yard, you know, basically slant play that was he threw 2 yards to Alvin Kamara, who took off for 60 yards. So, you know, a lot of those yardages were, you know, after the catch, not necessarily before the catch. So, you know, I think teams might start to kind of, you know, wise up to that scenario that his arm strength isn't what it used to be, and we'll just have to wait and see. You know, let's move down into the stud quarterbacks who did not perform well this week and did not earn a clutch game. Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Cam Newton. You know, all of them very low numbers. You know, Goff doesn't surprise me because he wasn't at home. You know, he's definitely one of those home-away splits. This week he's at home against the Saints. I'm definitely going on the over on everything for him. You know, definitely if you're kind of trying to do the streaming thing, this is Jared Goff week's kid, definitely. And same way with Roethlisberger. He's home this week playing Seattle. I mean, Andy Dalton, for gosh sakes, threw up 418 yards against the Seahawks in Seattle, and I heard it was raining. How in the hell did that happen? So, granted, some of those plays were deep. I don't know if you saw the first touchdown to John Ross, where the defensive back misplayed it like a bad, 12-year-old in a Little League game. Like, he literally saw the ball coming and ran in on it, and the ball just went right over his head, fell right into John Ross's hands. I don't even know John Ross knew the ball was coming. Because when you see the play, you kind of look like John Ross, like, oh, look what I got, and then ran in the end zone. Terrible play by the defensive back, but so that was one of the touchdowns. But anyway, you know, the Baker Mayfield game, I was there live. They came out like gangbusters, looked like the team I expected them to be. Short passes, you know, mixing the run in, keeping the team on the edge, the defense on their toes, not doing the obvious play. And then after that, they just went completely away from it. And so I blame Kitchens for some bad play calling. Refs certainly had their way with 182 yards in penalty flags. So if that offensive line is that bad that they hold that much all the time, I guess we'll have to wait and see if, you know, this week on Monday night if the same thing happens. But man, and then Mayfield fell apart at the end. He tried to do too much. He was just, he just lost it. I mean, no question. And I totally get it. Are you concerned for the Mayfield, the offensive line, and the Browns at this point? Because boy, if they're that bad, I mean, the Titans are a decent defense, so you got to give them a little credit. They will definitely be a good defense all year. That wasn't like the Dolphins or the Browns were playing the Dolphins that looked that bad. Titans are solid, but what are your thoughts on Mayfield, Browns, and company?
Well, you were there too, so I don't know if maybe it was a case of just the hype, was a little out of control.
Oh, the hype was terribly out of control, but it has been all summer. You got a new guy, and this supposed to be kind of the centerpiece of your offense, and Odell Beckham, and so it'll be remain to be seen how much of a chemistry they can build up. I'm not worried about it at all. I mean, the hype was a little bit out of control, like I said, but I don't think that
it's to a point where they can't still come out and be a good team. And it's week one, so
Right.
let's not get too crazy here. I will say Baker Mayfield, though, had him in a couple places, needed a big game out of him, and ended up losing by a close margin, largely because of the picks that Baker Mayfield threw. So I'm not too concerned just yet.
Yeah. No, me neither. But I've lived in Cleveland long enough. It was not a good feeling. I was not a very nice person that day to anyone. But anyway, the amazing part is that Marcus Mariota had 26.8 fantasy points, ranked 11th. I watched that game, and I still am dumbfounded of how he could look so bad and somehow come up with such good numbers. Now, I get it. One of them was a 75-yard screen to Derrick Henry, who, while Myles Garrett got clipped in the back and no call was made, not that I'm angry about it. So that was 75 yards. Another one was a bomb to A.J. Brown that literally looked like a punt. I was waiting for A.J. Brown to wave his hand like it was a fair catch. Denzel Ward, again, misplayed it badly. He should have just knocked the ball down. I don't know. He was trying to do an interception instead, and A.J. Brown caught the ball for like a 60-yard pass. If you take out those two passes, I think he had like 130 yards passing.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Is you take those? He had 248 total on the day. So
right.
Like you said, you take those two out, he was around 110, 120 range.
Right.
But also too, he only completed 58% of his passes
right.
too. So
yeah.
What makes it ultra impressive is he didn't turn the ball over and he threw the 3 touchdowns. But you dig a little bit, it's not as impressive as it seems.
It is true. Again, mostly because of the fact that by the second half, the defense was so tired of being on the field that the pass rush was going away. The team totally forgot about the fact that Delaney Walker lived and breathed at all and just let him run wild. Now, from a fantasy standpoint, I was giddy.
Yep.
It's very difficult when you're a Browns fan watching a game and you watch and your guy that you draft in a lot of leagues at tight end in like the 10th and 12th round just caught 2 touchdown passes. But yeah, I mean, and that's where he got 3 touchdowns. And 2 of them were Delaney Walker, who was wide open and pretty much fell in the end zone, and the other one was a 75-yard screen. So, like you said, most of the other passes were flying over people's heads or bouncing on the ground or, and Corey Davis, please, people, stop. I'm just going to tell you now. But again, Mariota overthrew him 3 times. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", and he was throwing them over his head. That's bad. That's really a bad scene.
I like it. I didn't see any of the game, but like I said, when you're under 60% completion, it can be a good day for you.
Right. But there was a lot of guys. I mean, I suppose the 2 biggest names we'll wrap up quarterbacks so we don't spend all day on. Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson with both huge games. Lamar Jackson against the Dolphins, I guess we expected a good game. Nothing like this, that's for sure. The amazing thing is he had 5 touchdown passes, but he only attempted 20 passes. That's really sad. So, we'll see how that comes back down to earth, if teams, start doing a better job. We'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. Prescott looked good against the Giants. Again, not a very good defensive team. So we'll see how that plays out. This week they play against Washington, which, is in Washington. Washington's pass defense certainly gave up some points at the end, but then again they jumped off to a 17-0 lead. So, Wentz had nothing that he could do other than throw the ball. So they could certainly give up some big plays as they did with Deshaun Jackson. So pretty much that's quarterbacks for the week. So let us move on to the running back positions. We had 25 players earn a clutch game this week, which is basically over about 11.2 fantasy points in a PPR in America. A lot of studs, a lot of the top names. I think basically if you had a pretty decent draft and you got some good running back 1 and 2s, they were probably on the good list. Now there were some, so the McCaffreys, Cook, Johnson, Kamara, Bell, Barkley, Zeke, all the guys were there. Even, Chubb made it as well. If you're looking at RB2 type guys, Chris Carson, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Marlon Mack. Mark Ingram, Damian Williams, so Fournette. So those guys all were there. There weren't that many who missed earning a clutch game. Gurley, James Conner, Kerryon Johnson, and Devontae Freeman were probably the big four that didn't. There was a lot of love for David Montgomery. Didn't do well on a Monday night. We'll see how he does this week as Chicago, goes. It got Denver coming in, is going to Denver. So see how he does in the high altitude. But not a ton. Joe Mixon also didn't have a good game, but he got hurt, so we can rule that. Aaron Jones, we all know what happened last Thursday. So overall, there wasn't really much from a running back. Was there anybody that jumped out at you? And it doesn't have to be the studs, just anybody who jumped out at you that you were surprised that did as well as they did or as badly as they did in week one?
Well, you said too, a lot of the top guys didn't have a bad week, but of course the ones that did are guys that I own in a lot of spots, and I'm looking at you, Kerryon Johnson, James Conner, and I got Sonny Michel as my RB2 in a couple places, so I wasn't real happy about that, especially those leagues that you got some cash on the line. And what pisses me off even further is you have guys like Wayne Gallman that got a clutch game, and those guys did not, and Rex Burkhead as well. But I don't know if there's really a whole lot of surprises. I mean, I don't know necessarily. I think we had a little bit of confidence that Austin Eckler could step in and be really effective. I don't know if we thought he would be effective to that level where he was the second highest scoring guy of the week. Yeah. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot of surprises. Of course, for my hometown Colts, I'd love to see Marlon Mack go off and then almost pull off that win. But from a fantasy standpoint, you got to be happy if you got those top guys. The guy that I was probably the happiest to see it play out the way it did, because I got him cheap in a lot of drafts before the whole LaShawn McCoy thing. That was Devin Singletary. I was glad to see him do well, and kind of what we those of us that drafted him late, kind of what we're expecting out of him. So that was probably my favorite one to see on there.
Yeah, definitely a couple of good values in there. Like you said, Eckler, I think we all thought Eckler was going to have a decent week, but certainly not like that. And if he continues like that, Melvin Gordon will be traded very quickly. And hopefully to a team that can use them. I think there was a lot of surprise of the amount of touches that LaShawn McCoy got to share with Damian Williams. Damian Williams earned a clutch game mostly because he got a touchdown. If he doesn't, he gets 12.5 points. He would have snuck in, but yeah, definitely him and McCoy were sharing. So that scares a few people, but we all know that we weren't all that much in on Damian Williams in the first place. So, we're okay there. Like I said, we'll just have to see. I have Sonny Michel in a few leagues too. I am starting him this week because if he can't go off this week against the Dolphins, then he's off my team for the rest of the year. That's for sure. If he can't get at least 75 yards and a touchdown rushing, I'm going to be very disappointed. And that's how they work too, right? Burkett and James White both get 13, 14 fantasy points and earn a clutch game. Sonny Michel gets 1.4. That's going to switch this week. That Sonny Michel will probably get 120 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and Burkett and White won't see the field but 10 plays. It's just the way they roll. So, so like I said, it's we'll have to see how this. It's week one. We don't get too overly excited about things. But, like you said, it's the studs did what the studs need to do, and that's what you hope for. Again, we're going to get into the wide receivers here pretty much the same way. So we'll just go with that terrible segue and go right into that. Like I said, Sammy Watkins, number 1, 46 points. Deshaun Jackson, number 2. John Ross, number 3. Talk about a guy that came back from the dead. But if I was a gambling man, which I kind of am, I would probably bet that by the end of week 6, John Ross will only have 3 out of 6 clutch games. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to be the way he's going to be, And especially if A.J. Green comes back in week 4, because then it'll be, Tyler Boyd and A.J. Green if they're healthy. The usual studs, as I said, were there. Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, all the boys. There wasn't too many that didn't make it. Probably the biggest name at the bottom list or on the bad list, I call it, was Devontae Adams in that game against Chicago. But we all know he's going to bounce back and have a big game this week. I don't think anybody be surprised. Probably Mike Evans having a bad game in a game against San Francisco where you had thought he would at least earn a clutch game, at least get 4 catches in 60 yards and earn his 10, 11 points or 70 yards. You got 4.8. I mean, that's just that's not a good start at all. It says the Buccaneers-Panthers game is delayed. Is there bad weather?
Where are they playing?
Carolina.
Oh, I don't know, because I was going to say if they're playing in Tampa, I know there was some storms rolling through.
No, I just happened to look at my phone and it says delayed. So, yeah, that's weird. So, must be maybe some storms are rolling through there. But, so going back to, like you said, wide receivers, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams are probably the two big. Tyreek Hill, of course, but got hurt, so we expect that. I know everybody loved Christian Kirk, 8.4 points. My boy, Mr. Fitzgerald, 25.3. Yes, he's not dead yet. So what about the wide receiver position? Anybody that, as you go down that list, that there's probably a lot of surprises, I'm sure. Because obviously when there's 47 people on this list, there's going to be some shock and awe going through there. But any of them really, outside of John Ross, like you just went, wow, can't believe it.
Well, it's a little strange to see a Miami Dolphin even make the list for anything this week. So that's, Preston Williams squeaking in at number 47 there at the very end. But yet again, I'm going to go back to the Steelers. You would have thought maybe Juju might have been a little higher up the list as far as some of the disappointing guys. But, like you said before, got Philip Dorsett there as well. A lot of people speculated on him late. I know he was a guy that you were kind of big on as being one of those late dart throws, and it worked out first week. Guy that I'm very intrigued by that made our list this week is DJ Chark. And he's a guy that I don't know necessarily if we're going to see consistency like this out of him. I know I was kind of looking around for some things about him. I know Mike Clay likes him quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Could be a guy that could maybe separate himself in that Jacksonville offense. Was a rookie last season. Maybe he kind of learns the ropes. They have a lot of, I think, kind of wide receiver 2 type guys there. But I think as far as talent level, he's the guy that can maybe separate himself and maybe be that number 1. But you had guys like him. You had scary Terry McLaurin, who went off a little bit. So you had some guys that really put up some numbers as far as rookies as well. I think that's another thing because, yet again, I'll bring up your fondness for rookies and the consistency model. And you had about 3 that at least went for 100 yards and are on this list. Right.
No, definitely. And like you said, you're always going to have those guys. I think the McLaren one was a real surprise to me because, I don't think anybody was expecting Case Keenum to be in the top 10 for quarterbacks in the first place, especially against Philadelphia. But I think that was a big surprise. Danny Amendola was one of those where I'd heard some talk about how him and Stafford were kind of hitting it off, in preseason. And, you need that kind of guy that's going to be your security blanket. I mean, to me, Amendola is basically a poor man's Julian Edelman, where, he's going to get the targets, he's going to get the short passes. That used to be Marvin Jones, but he didn't get them this week, so we'll just have to wait and see if that gets a little bit better. Again, will he do that every week? We have to wait and see. If you go down the list, Ted Ginn, I had him in a lot of leagues that I picked him up kind of like Philip Dorsett because nobody wanted him. Didn't start him in anything, but he's nice to have on the bench when people go look into your waiver wire and go, hey, where's Ted Ginn? Oh, Bob has him. That's always a good thing. I think beyond that, there was obviously a few other surprises on there, but with wide receivers, half of these guys, not half, a third of these guys won't be on the list next week, and either get some new ones or we'll get some of the guys that move up and do well. Going back to DJ Chark, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things I heard too as well was that Chark's performance improved when God bless you, came on board to be the quarterback. So, D.D. Westbrook kind of went away, and Chark kind of became Ginshu, nice, favorite receiver at that point. Is that what you heard as well, or that was one of the things that somebody brought up about how that's why they like Chark going forward, because of his relationship of probably working more a second team in the past with Minshew versus Foles and the quarterbacks in last year.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that those guys would be the ones working, together in training camp and whatnot. So it might be a case of, he could be kind of a sneaky, maybe more of a PPR play if he's still out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe get you a little bit of points that way. I don't think you're going to see 4 for 146 every week, but I think you could definitely see him take a big step this year. But like you said too, it all depends upon our guy Uncle Rico to see if he can get the ball out there. But he's willing to make a bet he can throw that football over those mountains. So we'll see.
That's right. That's exactly it. Looks like the game is still in delayed mode. That's
lightning.
Really
it's
weird.
A lightning delay. That's what I just saw. So
yeah, that's what I kind of figured. Something must be up. But anyway, all right. So let's move on to the tight ends. Definitely some surprises. I mean, all the big boys were here: Kittle, Kelsey, and Ertz. But they weren't 1, 2, and 3. They were 9th, 13th, and 16th. Hunter Henry slipped in at the number 17 spot, but as you know, he's out for a while. So that's certainly something that we didn't want. I picked Henry in a couple leagues. More often than not, it was because Evan Ingram was gone. So that kind of has hurt. I did also draft O.J. Howard when Ingram was gone, or Jared Cook when Ingram was gone, and guess what? Those two guys sucked this week. So I'm really hoping that O.J. Howard kicks it in tonight once the lightning blows through here. Jared Cook, I really expect a little bit more in that game, to see him a little bit more, but there was no question that Breeze was locked in on Thomas and Ginn. And Ginn. So like you said, we'll just have to wait and see. Boy, Eric Ebron fans, Jacoby Brissett did not find him, and neither did Jack Doyle. I didn't even put Jack Doyle on the list of bad because most people don't have him, but neither one of the tight ends did very well in that game. Now, Marlon Mack was running rampant through the Chargers line, so kind of no reason to throw the ball to tight ends when the guy's rushing for 175 yards. But we'll just have to, we assume that will all come back. Obviously a lot of big surprises. I mean, I was really excited to see Evan Ingram at the top of the list because I have Evan Ingram in a lot of leagues. I think the bigger surprises was rookie TJ Hawkinson at 25.1 fantasy points. Normally, rookie tight ends don't do well in the NFL, as we've shown from fantasy purposes. But I was watching a little bit of that game, flipping between games or whatever. He looked pretty good. Did you get a chance to see anything?
I saw some highlights, but I think just him coming out of college, coming out of Iowa, and just the hype that surrounded him being a number 1 pick. I think he's that guy that can take that next step to be up there with the Ertzes and the Kelseys and the George Kittles of the world. You may not see it happen this year, right, but he's definitely got the chops for that for sure.
Yeah. The bad side of that is for Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones owners, seeing Hawkinson and Amendola get most of the targets is not what we were expecting. So we hope that will change. Mark Andrews, big day for Baltimore, but then everybody had a big day for Baltimore. Delaney Walker, we already talked about. Certainly excited to see him up there as he's been one of my favorites. Austin Hooper with a decent game. Obviously, they were way behind in that game against Minnesota, assuming that they were pretty much shutting down at least Calvin Ridley and company. I think Julio still earned his clutch game, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he did, but I don't think Ridley. Yeah, he did. Okay. So they all had a pretty decent day. Njoku caught the touchdown, so that gave him his points. I guess the biggest surprise was seeing not one, but 2 Dallas Cowboy tight ends on the clutch game list. Blake Jarwin and Jason Witten both got touchdowns, so big surprise there. Tyler Higbee for the Rams is a surprise. Tyler Eifert did not make the list, but C.J. Uzama made the list. And like I said, we're rounded out with Henry there. Anybody on the tight end side that you were maybe a little more surprised than, or somebody that you were expected to see there? I know a lot of people had a lot of love for Darren Waller going into this year. Certainly proved his worth as well.
Yeah, he was probably the biggest surprise for me because I wasn't going to be shocked to see him get a clutch game, but I definitely wasn't expecting what we saw. I don't think we were expecting the Raiders offense to come out and do what they did against Denver either. But probably the biggest guy, not necessarily a guy that I have in a ton of places, but I probably got the most questions this week about O.J. Howard.
Mm-hmm.
People wanting to, in a little bit more shallow league, maybe drop O.J. Howard for guys like Mark Andrews and the Darren Wallers of the world, and just kind of seeing what's out there on waivers. So, and I think a lot of that comes back to what you get out of Jameis Winston. Is Jameis Winston a guy that's going to keep turning the ball over and get pulled? And, it's going to remain to be seen. But I don't think we're, ready to panic. Like I said, we talked about with the Browns after week 1. Same thing with O.J. Howard. I don't think you want to chuck him to the curb just yet, but it's definitely worth monitoring. And if you have another guy on your bench that has a little bit more favorable matchup, you might want to go ahead and throw him in there. I don't know if you had him in there tonight, but all comes back to what Jameis Winston does for me.
Yeah. No, and I left O.J. Howard in for this week. I figured, I got to give him a chance. I mean, I drafted him to be the starter. I'm not going to go out there and, go grab Blake Jarwin and and drop him.
And as did most people. I think if you have
starting
tight end. So
it's always amazing to me. And I go, and I said to somebody that they were like, "Well, who'd you pick up on the waiver wire this week?" And I go, basically, I didn't pick up anybody. They're like, "What?"
Yeah,
They're like, "You didn't go out and grab all these guys?" And I'm like, "No, I had Deshaun Jackson, Larry Fitzgerald, Emmanuel Sanders on my bench. I had depth already. I drafted depth. I don't need to go find it in week 1." But or the Ted Gins or the Philip Dorsett's or whatever. It's not. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is why we promote what we promote is to find those guys like those older players like a Sanders, Fitz, or guys that have some consistency and are in the right spots, and not just write them off because they're a little older, they're a little this, they're a little that, they're not as exciting, they're not as flashy, they're not the young stud, they're not the the silver toy, the new shiny toy. Most of the leagues I did very few transactions. Maybe the only ones I really did were the ones I would, like a Hunter Henry ones and ones that guys were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I had Henry in a couple leagues, but yeah, I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to not be, if you're scrambling in week 1 to get to the waiver wire to try to save a position like a tight end or a quarterback or something. I mean, yeah, that's troublesome. I mean, but it happens, and I go again. Usually it's injuries for me, but or if you're the Scott Fishbowl and it's a 2-quarterback league and you've lost everybody like you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a fun time when you're heading into the season with Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and Josh Rosen as your quarterbacks. When you can start 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
fun times.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And then when people are dropping $99 on Jacoby Brissett and Uncle Rico as their quarterback or as their quarterbacks, man, it's a rough league.
It could be a long year in Scott Fishbowl for this guy.
Yeah, it could be. Well, I have that kind of team. I think in the drafting with Giants, I've looked at it today, and I was just like, oof, this team ain't going far. And I forget who I had too. A couple guys are. I think I had Tyreek Hill, and I think I had Hunter Henry, and I think I had my backup quarterback was it might have been Nick Foles as well or something. I don't know, but big trouble. So, well, we got about 6 minutes. Let's just whip through a couple. We've talked about injuries of Hunter Henry. There isn't much there. I mean, there's nobody there as a handcuff follow-up. So you basically got to go out and find, hopefully a tight end that might be available. Darren Waller, hopefully Hawkinson. Depends on hopefully how shallow your league is. Let's talk about Darius Geis. He's moved on, or not moved on, but he's hurt again. Could be 4 to 6 weeks. I've also heard 6 to 10 weeks. It just depends. This guy's just, a walking. He's the new Jordan Reed. It must be why he plays for Redskins.
Must be contagious.
Yeah, is there anything, you're going to do there? Obviously, you're going to put in Adrian Peterson luckily if you got him. In my big competition, what's it called, the Fantasy World Championship thing, I drafted both Geis and Peterson. That's for that reason. Because I'm like, one of them, at first is like, oh, man, I did a good job. I got Geis. And, Peterson's just, they're not going to do anything with him. And now it's like, oh, God, I'm so glad I got Peterson. So at least I have a running back in Washington. Not that was like the best thing to do, but those are tough leagues to draft in. So you got to cover your base. Is this guy ever going to make it? Is he going to pull this off, or is he just going to be another one of those just can't stay healthy running backs and we'll move on?
I mean, for me, where he's at this point. He's a guy I'm stashing in Dynasty and redraft leagues for next year when I'm going into him. Unless I can get him for absolutely dirt cheap, nothing, I'm not targeting him until he proves he can do it.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Adrian Peterson. Guy, I'd like to add in some PPR leagues. Chris Thompson.
Oh yeah, well yeah,
earned a clutch game last week as well. Mm-hmm. So he's another guy. If he's out there on your waiver wire, that might be a sneaky little ad you can get in there with Darius Geis out, because not only will he catch the ball, I wouldn't be shocked to see him get maybe 8 to 10 carries a game as well.
Exactly. No, definitely a good call there on Chris Thompson. I've seen him go in a lot of leagues, on the waiver wire. I think I might even swooped in and picked him up in a league that I had Geis or somebody that I needed a decent backup. So Sam Darnold got caught kissing his girlfriend in the playground, and now he's got mono. So he's missing Monday night, which is hilarious because you also realize that Le'Veon Bell has injuries that they're concerned about for Monday night. So the Browns could play the Jets on Monday night. No Sam Darnold, maybe no Le'Veon Bell. It's like, wow, can we are we just tossing it in here for the Browns on Monday night so their ego doesn't get crushed if they get beat on Monday night by the Jets? They're almost like giving this game to them at this point. Robbie Anderson fans probably not as excited. I think the backup, if I'm not mistaken, is Trevor Siemian. That's not a good thing. So I didn't have any Jets anyway in most of my teams. I think I might have had Crowder in like one or two leagues. I think I had Crowder in a dynasty league or something. But I don't have much there. Any concerns for you? Did you do any Robbie Anderson drafting?
I have one share out of 18 leagues of Robbie Anderson as my wide receiver 3 in one of my dynasties, so I'm not too concerned there just yet. I've got a couple of guys I can go with if he ends up being terrible for the first couple weeks and then figures it out. I've got Le'Veon Bell in a couple places. I'm not too concerned about it, but yeah, it's shaping up to be a really exciting matchup for Monday night, especially if the Browns come out and lay an egg like they did last week. If they do that 2 weeks in a row,
if they do that against a non-Sam Darnold team,
maybe a 3-0 game, possibly Monday night.
Oh, I hope not. If they don't come out and kick some ass, I'm going to be very disappointed. All right, so we got 2 minutes left. We could talk for 2.5 hours on this guy. Your good friend and mine, Antonio Brown. Just when you thought he was, the roller coaster was coming, going up the hill for excitement, and now it's coming down the hill with not one, not two, but 3 rape charges. Former ex-something, gold digger, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her. This is ugly. He says it's all about her grabbing money. It could be. We don't know. There's certainly those people out there. But what are your thoughts on AB? I have no shares. I'm very glad I have no shares. This used to be one of my favorite players consistency-wise. The only thing that's consistent about him is how much he gets in the news. Thoughts?
Yeah, I have no shares, and he's consistently crazy. Is about the only consistency you can get out of him.
Right.
I'm tired of hearing about him. I want him to play football and do what he does. I don't want to hear about the off the field
or get off the field, or just get out of the field and get out of the way.
Yeah. I just want it to go away. And when you sign with the Patriots, whatever, we can get past that. Just go play, move on. Don't want to hear about it anymore.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. It was funny. I did the one dynasty league I'm in. This guy was bitching about Antonio Brown. I go, dude, I'll take him off your hands for a bag of rocks. If you don't want him. That was before the Patriots. Then when he got signed by the Patriots, he was all in. Now, of course, this thing's coming up. Now he's back in it, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think I want to trade for him anymore.
Yeah, no.
I'll stay away from that. So, all right, well, tell everybody where you're at, what you're doing about consistently cashing and everything great with that, and we'll wrap this up.
Okay, consistently cashing. We went 50% last week, so not great, not terrible. We have another one of those ready for you this week. Colby Conway and myself over at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Bob, you're going to be filling in for me on the podcast.
Yep.
We're winding down the baseball season. Nasty Cast. We did a 2020 much too early draft last week with Bubba Intrican off Bench with Bubba podcast, and Shelly V from Rotographs from Pitcher List knows her stuff. Does awesome work out there. We did a little about a 6-8 round mock draft with those the 4 of us or the 5 of us last week. So catch that on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from.
All right. Thanks, man. All right. We wrap it up. As always, you can find me at Bob_Lung. We will be back next Thursday. Don't forget, listen to Profit Like It's...
As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers. People who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today. As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers. People who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today.